And we are live. Alrighty. Welcome back, everybody, to our Mentorship Meetup Wednesdays. I am your host, your mentor, and your big sister, Deborah Ann Danae Feldhazen, and it is an absolute pleasure to be back in class with my incredible tribe and soon-to-be tribe members. So for those of you who are here in the Zoom room, for those of you who are joining us online, I need to ask a big favor of you. Reach out to your battle buddies. Reach out to your fellow tribe. Reach out to your prayer partners. Reach out to your partners in the faith, whoever it is you feel needs to be here, because today we are going to be discussing why God chose you in the second part of our Mantle and the Mirror, or the Mirror and the Mantle series of our mentorship meetups. Now, I was planning to have today be the final part in our The Mirror and the Mantle series, but God snuck in one more little point that we're going to cover in next week's mentorship meetup. So you don't want to be late. If you missed part one, it's okay. We still got time to catch up. So go ahead, reach out to your battle buddies. If you're here in the Zoom room, if you're in social media and you don't have anybody, it's okay. And even if you do have somebody, here's what you're going to do, okay? You're going to go to the Facebook page. You can go to my Facebook page or the Next Gen Prophets Facebook page, okay? You're going to go to that little Facebook page. You're going to load that Facebook page in the live streaming, and you're going to hit share. Okay, you're going to hit share or go down into the comment section and tag somebody who needs to be here for class. For those of you who are a part of our Next Gen Prophets community, you have access to our private Facebook group, our private community of Next Gen Prophets. You're welcome to post there, reach out to your fellow tribe. I wanted to let y'all know who are watching this recording, who are maybe joining us online or popping into the room here. I see a couple of you are jumping on in here. I want to let you know that when you join our tribe of Next Gen Prophets, you are joining a community that is loyal to you, that is there to have your back. We're here to accelerate you. And every single member of our tribe is assigned what we call a battle buddy. You hear me mention this every single week. And what that is, let me tell you a little bit about this. A battle buddy is your designated armor bearer, your designated best friend while you are here in this tribe. And for most people, even after tribe, they are there to pray you through. They are there to hold you up when you feel like you can't hold yourself up anymore, to push you, to remind you of why you are in this journey. You are on this journey and this process through your prophetic mandate, and to remind you of who God called you to be. Because sometimes when we're going through our prophetic process, guys, it can be exhausting. It can be difficult because we have the world coming against us, trying to tell us who we should be. We have the devil coming against us, telling us who we should be. And sometimes it's difficult to just always remain full of joy, full of strength, 100% all of the time. And that's where battle buddies come into play. Battle buddies stand at your back to help you combat all of that noise from the world around you and the spiritual principalities that are coming against you on a daily basis, and help you remain grounded in the vision, in the promise, and in the identity that God has given you. So if you need a battle buddy, if you need somebody who's going to stand with you, who's going to pray you through, maybe you don't need a mentor right now, but you do need a best friend. You do need somebody who's going to be there to pray you through, where you can ask questions. You need a community that's going to shelter you, protect you. www.myprophetictribe.com. Go ahead, book your consultation with me or my husband, and let us help you find that safe place. Tribe is a safe place for those who are in the midst of their process and need a safe place to figure out what that process is. We're going to give you language for that process. We're going to give you the steps that you need to work through. Okay? So let's work together. Let's collaborate. Let's accelerate one another in the call of God. That's what this community is for. We're not a church. We're a community of prophets here to accelerate you into your prophetic call. We're here to provide you with that safe place so that you can go through your process. All right. So if you have reached out to your battle buddy, your prayer partner, your whoever it is you need to be here today, go ahead and drop in the chat box, drop in the comment section. If you're watching on social media, tag them in the comment section. So when they do pop up into this chat, in this message, they can reply to you saying, I was here. I caught the message. If you're in the Zoom room, put the name in the chat box. Put it in the chat box. Who have you called out to be here with you today so we can hold you and hold them accountable? So we're going to begin moving on. While you guys are dropping those names in the chat box, I also just want to say thank you to some of our tribe members who have been supporting us through this last crazy week. If you've been following Nathan and Chifa on social media, they had a very interesting weekend. Over the weekend, Chifa delivered 2 healthy twin boys. Rayma and Rafa, my nephews, are here, y'all. I had the honor of getting to hold them both, and they're so cute and they're so small. They are breathing and growing very quickly. It's very possible these 2 munchkins can come home this week already. They're spending some time in the NICU because they were born prematurely. They were born at 33 weeks, which is just a smidge early than what we would have liked. So they spent some time in the NICU, but they are thriving. They are thriving so well. They're going to be home very, very soon. Shout out to Nathan and Chifa, who have done an incredible job in, pioneering through this. Michael and I have been through this a couple of times. We know what it takes to thrive in such an environment, and they are doing an absolutely incredible job. We also got to celebrate and surprise Chifa for her birthday yesterday. She's been in hospital now for a little over a week. And so, with all this stuff going on, she didn't expect anything for her birthday. She's like, nobody's really here. I'm in hospital, nothing happening. But some of our family and a few members of our tribe, we got together and we surprised her for her birthday with a little pamper pack. And I could go and kind of like give her a manicure and pedicure because every girl needs a spa day on her birthday. So thank you guys for supporting us. Special shout out to Sarah, to Deborah, and Rochelle for your investment, for helping us make yesterday so special for her. You helped make what should have been or could have been a very stressful moment just so much more special and incredible. So thank you guys so much for your investment. And for those of you who would like to continue to invest into Tribe here, every bit, that investment that you do, if you were blessed by a consultation, if you had a consultation with Michael and I, you had a counseling session with Michael or I, or you in any way were blessed by this tribe, please do feel free to give a donation towards that. Every donation, every merch that you purchase, every subscription goes right back into our tribe. Every bit that you give towards us helps us make what we did yesterday for Chifa and what we do for our tribe every single day possible. So you're welcome. I got some giving information there in the chat box, in the comment section. We'll also include it in the recap email. Feel free to give towards that because those donations enable us to have these consultations, to keep them free, and to invest and pour back into our community with zero expenses. So please do support us. Continue to pray for us as we go through. We have a meeting on Friday to meet with somebody to discuss an event space so that we can begin having live meetings in San Diego. It was a little waylaid last week because of the babies and everything that happened. But this week we are getting back on track and we should have more news for you by next week, Wednesday. I'm very much looking forward to that. So yeah, lots going on. A lot has happened, but now that y'all are warmed up, now that y'all are comfortable, let's go ahead and jump into today's mentorship meetup. We're going to talk about why God chose you as part 2 of the Mantle and the Mirror series that we've been talking about the last few weeks. Now, in our last mentorship meetup, we discussed the role of an heir, of how God sees you, and the role an heir is meant to be playing. There are 3 core roles that an heir is meant to play when it comes to taking over the inheritance that God has for him. The first is they carry the father's name and identity, which we spoke on in our last meeting. The second is to expand the family resources or business. And the third is to release the legacy to the next generation. Now, today I want to talk about why God chose you, expanding the family resources. And in order to talk on this, I want you to understand something about generational altars, generational curses, and generational blessings. Now, when we talk about generational lines and curses, all we see is the curse part. We see how the devil comes to kill, steal, and destroy. We see about how the devil came and twisted and created this generational curse of lust, of abuse, of drug addiction, alcoholism, whatever you name it, fear, rejection. And we sit there and say, okay, we got to break that generational curse. We got to dismantle that altar that has been set before us, this altar of witchcraft, whatever the case may be. We're going to disassociate. We're going to break free of it. But what we don't stop to think about is why that generational curse was put into place in the first place. See, we can't talk about generational altars or curses without talking about generational or bloodline blessings and promises. See, in every generational line, God had a vision, God had a plan, God had a purpose for that bloodline. When we read through the Bible, I mean, can we just stop for a second? We've got an entire book on lineage. We got actually a couple of books on pure lineage. God is very specific about bloodlines and lineage and who is related to who. He is very specific on who he connects, how he connects them, and whose children they come from, and so on and so forth. So when it comes to talking about generational curses and altars, we need to stop and recognize that God had a plan for your generational line to begin with. But the devil wanted to contaminate what God had put that bloodline together for, and so he brought along his own curse. He brought along that curse of addiction. He brought along that curse of abuse, of fear, of rejection, of whatever it is, you name it. He brought that to counterfeit or counteract the very bloodline blessing and vision that God had for your generation. And if we are going to begin understanding why God chose us, we need to first understand why God chose your bloodline. Why did God choose your generation? Because there was a generational blessing, there was a generational vision and instruction that God put in place many, many years ago that the devil came to steal, kill, and destroy with that generational curse and altar that you have then been worshiping on. If you want to deal with that curse, let us look at the blessing that God had from that generation. See, when we begin dealing with generational curses and altars, we immediately throw the baby out with the bathwater. We're like, I want nothing to do. I am cutting off this bloodline. I am cutting off this everything that, I don't want anything to do with it because it's cursed, it's addiction, it's all of this nastiness. I don't want anything to do with it. But you're cutting off a major artery that's going to your heart. You are restricting the blood flow that your body needs in order to survive and thrive in the environment God has placed you in. See, just because the blood is contaminated does not mean that that artery needs to be shut off. What you need is a blood transfusion. What you need is to find the source that is contaminating that bloodstream and cleanse it and purify it and change it out so that it can produce healthy blood cells, healthy blood flow so that you can thrive in the position and in the environment that God has placed you in. But we want to cut off the immediate artery and say, no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. That artery was put in place for a reason. For you to thrive. God connected you with the bloodline you were put in on purpose. Now, sometimes we need to be completely removed from that bloodline. Hence why we have the sanctification of the blood. I spoke on this message during our Easter Sunday message. If you didn't catch it, go to our YouTube channel, go listen to it, go catch up, or watch the live stream that was posted onto our Facebook page as well. Because I spoke on blood transfusion. I spoke on the power of the blood and why it's so important to us. So go and check that out. I don't want to go too deep on that right now. But I want you to understand that we want to take on your role as an heir to expand the business and family resources of the kingdom, so the kingdom resources that God has for you as an heir to his kingdom, you need to recognize that you have been placed in that bloodline for a reason. Sometimes we need adoption. We need to move from one bloodline into another. But at the end of the day, that artery remains the same, so that we can have continual blood flow and live healthy. You need to understand that God started something with your father or your grandfather or your great-great-grandfather that he intends for you and the future generations that come after you to finish. He started a family business, and maybe along the way there were a few swindlers and a few crooks that came along, and they may have changed things up and it's not running as smoothly as it needs to be. But that doesn't mean that the business itself is bad. No, it's just had bad management. So what you need to do as a kingdom heir in this bloodline, in this generation, is to take control over the family business and get it right. You need to fire some people. You need to hire some people. You need to change certain aspects of how the products are made and distributed, and you need to fix up your marketing strategy. We need to put the right people in position to get the right import and export that we need from this business. If we want to expand, we need to fix our reputation. And it is your job as an heir to that family business to then do that. But if you cut off this bloodline and say, I want nothing to do with this bloodline, you forsake the inheritance that God has for you. And therefore, you have no authority on how that family business can be changed, can be run, or how it does or does not expand. You have now left it into the hands of those swindlers who have been running the company up to this point, who are going to run your family name into the ground. You're an heir to the kingdom. You are an heir to your father's inheritance, and it is up to you to clear your family's name. It is up to you to make sure that family's business is expanded, grows, and or even maintained as it needs to be. So as we jump into your role in the expansion, I have some examples that we can discuss, but I'm going to lean and read specifically from Proverbs chapter 13. This entire chapter really has so many golden nuggets about the role of an heir, about expanding, about the mentality and mindset of expansion of an heir, especially in regards to business and stuff like that. So guys, I really recommend you read through this chapter. Now, the two examples that we can look at in the word that really epitomize somebody who took the family business and expanded it is Solomon, of course, and Joshua. See, Solomon took the physical resources and blueprint of the temple that David had put in place, right? So the very first thing that we need to look at when we begin the expansion of the family resources or the kingdom resources is, well, what Solomon did. We built the temple. And what he did to build the temple is he took the blueprint and the resources that his previous generation, that his father, David, had set aside for this vision to be completed. He took up the vision of his father first. See, so many new heirs, what they want to do is they want to dump the old and we want to take on something new, right? We want to have our own. We want to make our own name, a name for ourselves, not using my father's name, not using my... But somebody who's really wealthy understands the power of leaning on the resources at your disposal. See, Daddy David went out of his way to put together the perfect blueprint for the temple, for God, and for his ark. Okay, he had the down to the little noting of colors, the kinds of metals, how it would be carved, the height, everything. He had it down to the letter, written down.
I have one.
And
Measuring tape.
And then, once he had that written down, he provided the resources that...
Yeah, that's all I need. I just need to measure the size of the box and see if it No, this is
Well,
fine.
just so you know, you're
Thank you.
accidentally unmuting yourself. So we are,
Long way. I just need to make sure.
oh dear. Uh, then once he had all the measurements in place, he then put all the resources in place for Solomon to build on. So first and foremost, if you're going to build the temple, you need to get David's blueprint, and then you need to use the resources he has set aside for you to then build on. Proverbs 13 verse 1 says, "A wise son heeds his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke." When we begin stepping up as heirs, we need to get people comfortable with us. See, we're new to the block. People know that we are our father's children. They know who birthed us, they know who raised us, but they don't yet know who we are in the running of that family business. They don't know if we're going to be wise. They don't know if we're going to be aggressive or if we're going to be passive in our business measure and how we're going to run that business. They don't know us yet. So, guess what? We're going to obey the laws. We're going to obey the instruction and use the resources our Heavenly Father set up for us ahead of time so that the people around us get comfortable with us, know who we are, know that we are trustworthy, so that when we move on to step number 2, which is we begin establishing those diplomatic ties, people know us by our fruit. Honor makes way for you. The Bible is quite clear on honor making way for you. If we want to see favor, blessing, financial health, relational, whatever the case may be, come our way, we need to abide by the reputation of our Father that set us up for succession. Now, I'm not just talking your natural fathers. If you caught part 1 of this message, you will understand I'm talking about your kingdom inheritance with God the Father. He's your father. We're heirs to his kingdom. We're heirs to his power, his resources, his storehouses, his wealth, his health, all of that. We are heirs to whatever is stored up in heaven and that God has made here on earth. We are heirs to it. We are inheritors of it. So when I'm referring to his blueprint, when I'm referring to his mandate, his resources, his ties, his reputation, that's the reputation we are called to walk out as next gen prophets, as those called fivefold ministers. We walk out the reputation of Christ. People don't see Deborah and Danae Feltes when I stand up here every Wednesday. People don't see Bertina Britton, Leandra, Carmen. They don't see Patricia. They don't see all these people here watching this live stream. What they see, what they hear is the last name of Deborah and Danae Christ Jesus. That's what they see. That's what they hear when I stand up here to teach. When I stand up here to give a word from God, guess what they're expecting? Me to be giving a word from God. And so I must make sure that I, as an heir, am positioning myself according to the instruction, according to the resources, according to the reputation of my father. Because if I can rest under the covering of his reputation that he has spent so many years building up, not only am I protected, but I'm going to see quicker results. Many of you keep trying to create your own reputation. You keep trying to prove yourself instead of just resting under and abiding by the instructions and laws that your father left behind for you. And it's going a lot slower. You're finding it harder to get healthy, harder to get wealthy, harder to find healthy relationships that are not rejecting you every 5 minutes. Okay, stop. Let's see what we can do to get back as an heir under the covering, under the instruction, with the resources God has provided you. The problem is, those resources maybe don't seem, taste, or sound like what you want. See, the second thing that Solomon did was he established diplomatic ties. There are certain relationships that God needs you to have and that God needs you to cut off. but you're holding on to them because A, they're safe, B, it's what expected of you, or C, it could cause your reputation to go through a little bit of mud. This is your safety net. You love them. They've been with you for years. Yes, it's true. They have been, but are they what you need to expand the kingdom? Now, I'm not just saying let's just go cut off everybody. Please. If you've been following us for a little while now, you know how important relationships are to us, how much we encourage community. You need relationships. I'm not saying cut off everybody. You got to figure this out on your own. No. What Solomon did was he was wise. It was what? Proverbs 13:20. Okay, guys, following of me. Proverbs 13:20 says, he who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Okay? He who walks with wise men will be wise. You need to choose people, okay, that will align with the vision and will add to your quality of life. There are many of us who have relationships with people out of guilt because they're less fortunate than you. They need more help. They're going through a divorce. Their spouse is abusive. There's this going on here. There's that, they've got so much going on in their lives and they've got nobody there to help them. Therefore, I'm keeping that relationship because I'm their only source of help. I'm their only source of sanity in this wild and chaos. Now, look, some of you do need to be that person, but that does not mean they are your diplomatic tie or they need to be your best friend. Okay? That is what we call a ministry. We are there to minister. We are there to pour out. They are not there to add to our vision. They are not aligned with our vision. They are not going to add to our quality of life. They are there to take and we are there to pour out. They are the less fortunate. They are the widows. They are the single mothers. They are the drug addicts, the alcoholics that need counseling, that need help. And we are there to pour in and we are there to give alms to the poor and to the needy and to the homeless as we are required to by the word of God. We are required to do that. I'm not saying you cannot have a relationship with them, but until they are healed, delivered, and set free, they cannot add to your vision, and they will not align with your vision. They can't. They're physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually incapable of it because they are in the midst of their own war. They are in the midst of their own craziness that's going on. They're trying to figure out their own identity. They're still in part one of this message, even pre-part one of this message. Okay? They're pre-part one. You guys know you are heirs. You guys know you are taking on an inheritance. You already are there. And if you were to allow that person into the business meetings of how you are going to distribute your merchandise, how you are going to make this business successful, they are going to drive it into the ground with their drama. And you cannot afford to have that drama driving your business because God's reputation as a businessman, as a father over the nations is not one of drama. It is one of stability, one of security, one of love, one of faith, one of hope, joy, long suffering, one who is not moved by emotion, but moved by what will produce metric. That is the God with whom we serve. He's not emotional like we are. He doesn't look at the world and the needs of the people and respond emotionally. He sits and looks at that needy person and says, what can I do to arrange your circumstances to get victory so you don't come here again? He doesn't sit there and say, shame, shame, I'm going to just love on you because you're going through a tough time. Yes, he loves them like any good father would. But he's also going to sit there and say, I love you, but let's stop meeting here. Let's meet where you're healthy. Let's meet where you're wealthy. I'm going to bring you people. I'm going to arrange your circumstances to push you to success so you stop coming back here. That's the God whom we serve. He loves us enough to push us to be healthy, to push us to be wealthy, to push us into an environment that is going to help us instead of kill us. That's the God with whom we serve. So when it comes to our relationships, those who are going to align with vision, and add to your quality of life, you want to find those that, first of all, don't have drama every 5 minutes in their life. Okay? Avoid the drama. Avoid it. The drama of this person's, they're always facing rejection. They've always got some sort of phone call coming in from their abusive ex-husband. They've always got some sort of trouble going on at work, at the pastor's house. The pastor spoke this from them from the pulpit, and the pastor, every pastor before them for the last 40 years. And there's always some sort of drama going on in their life. If we're looking for diplomatic relations that are going to expand the kingdom, that does not line up. Love them, pour out, invest, let us help them, let us be there for them in their time of need as God allows, but they're not coming into my inner sanctum. They're not determining how we expand this business. They're not affecting the reputation. Okay? You also want to avoid people who are always angry and full of pride, who are bitter and complain all the time, because pride blinds you. That is the most dangerous thing about pride. Not only does it set you up as, the judge and executioner, you get to decide, but it also blinds you to any weak points. It blinds you to where there could be a possibility of getting wounded or hurt because your way is right. You know the truth. You know how things are going to go. So if you're working with people that are very full of pride, that can't see the wood for the trees, that cannot see the log in their own eye because they refuse to or want to do everything their way, that's going to have a major impact on your business. Because if you want a successful business, anybody who runs a ministry or a business or is in some sort of managerial position knows you need to be aware of where there's weaknesses and flaws. Because if you don't identify them quickly, those weaknesses and flaws will be exploited by competitors. It will be exploited by those who want to see your business fail. Disgruntled employees, whoever needs and wants to see you fail, they're going to exploit those weaknesses. So a good heir is aware and looking for wise counselors who are not blind to what could be a problem and are not afraid to bring it up and work through with you. You want to find those who are reliable. You want to work through with those who are going to work through the weaknesses with you. So you're going to find people that have no problem pointing out the weaknesses and where there could be problems, but they're not necessarily going to help you succeed. We don't want to work with those people. We want to be wise in our relationships. I also want you to look at where you're breaking free or you're watching out for any other restrictions. So now we move into expanding the storehouse. So first we built the temple using the vision. We finished the vision. We established diplomatic ties with the right people. There are relationships we need to back off from, and there are relationships we need to establish, right? Who do we need to establish relational ties with to help expand the kingdom? And of course, what is the ministry vision of your forefather that you need to complete? All right? And then finally, we need to expand the storehouses. Now, in Proverbs 13:23, it says, much food is in the fallow ground of the poor, and for lack of justice, there is waste. Now, I love this first part that says, much food is in the fallow ground of the poor. Poor people are poor because they don't know how to leverage the resources at their disposal. Because everything is impossible. It's too difficult. It's too hard. They don't know how to leverage the resources at their disposal. Now, when we look at the parable of the rich man who sold everything that he had for a plot of land that in everybody's eyes was worthless. He sold everything for a plot of land that was worthless because he knew that that fallow ground held a pearl of great value, a pearl that would be worth double, if not 10 times the wealth that he just sold. See, that's how a wealthy person thinks. When it comes to expanding the storehouses, they sit and they see that fallow ground with that pearl of great value, and they're not afraid to do embarrassing things. They're not afraid to do things that could, in the rest of the world's eyes, deem shameful if it means that we are expanding the family business and adding to the name and reputation of our Father, because we're an heir to that kingdom. We're not afraid to take risks. We're not afraid to try new things. We're not afraid to step out in areas that other people are afraid to step out in because it could be too much. It could fail. Fail. Figure it out. Learn. That's what an heir does. Are you going to make mistakes? Of course you are, because you're not your father. You are not your father. You are his inheritor. You are his heir. You are the next generation. And you've learned something in your generation that wasn't there in previous generations. So it would be silly for you to 100% always do things the old way. You need to, in some places, modernize. I remember, I'm going to share one more story as I wrap up this point, and then I will give you guys a self-study project to do as well. I will never forget my friend. He was working in a sales company, and the sales company offered this really incredible system to help people keep track of stock they needed to order and customers, and it was this really incredible POS system or point of sale system that they were offering. And so people would sign up because it was like, this is what I need. But they ended up having a lot of people cancel after a certain amount of time because the system, although it was great, was still outdated. You couldn't get an app on your phone so they could track wherever they were traveling, wherever they were going. It had to be on the store computer. They couldn't even have it on the computer at home. They couldn't have it on their phone. They couldn't keep track. There were certain modern ways of doing business that the old system would not allow them to do. And so they ended up canceling and switching to other systems that maybe offered them a little bit less, but gave them the mobility that they needed to do modern sales and to keep up with the modern generation. And this is the ship that we need to recognize as heirs to the kingdom. That old system, that old vision that we had and that we've taken on is incredible. Get it set up. But then after you've got it set up, after you've established your own reputation, using that reputation of your father, after you've created those diplomatic ties, you need to now expand the storehouse by now getting the fresh revelation or interpretation of the vision that God already gave your forefathers. That generational blessing that God put in your bloodline needs to now receive the fresh impartation or the fresh interpretation of that vision. And now we begin building. Now we begin finding the pearl of great value. And it's going to require you being bold. It's going to require you being courageous. And I want you to understand something. The decision to be bold and to be courageous is not something that is a supernatural impartation. It's something you've got to make a choice to do over and over and over again. Many people say that I'm very bold. Many people say that I am fearless, but make no mistake, I have to choose to be bold. I have to choose to be fearless because sometimes I'm very afraid. Sometimes I'm afraid of the rejection that's going to come. Sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to stand up here and I'm going to get a backlash and I'm going to get somebody that's going to try and come against me. Sometimes I am, especially if it's a touchy subject. That's my human nature. Human nature is always going to be afraid of the unknown. Human nature is always going to be unsure of the future that they cannot see. But that's why we, as heirs to the kingdom, have one up on the rest of our human nature. Because we know the truth, because we have seen the future, because God has shown us the vision from our forefathers and he has given us the new interpretation of that vision for our future generations. And so I make a choice to be bold. I make a choice to be fearless. I make a choice to be courageous based on that vision that God has given me for future generations. I am bold in one area so they don't have to be in the future. They will need to be bold in other areas that are not available to me at this time and age. But for now, I can set up the playing field. I can make the mistakes that need to be made in this generation, in this age, so they don't have to do it in the next age. They can worry about their generation and their future generations. They can set up the stage for later on down the line. But I need to first make that sacrifice. I need to make that choice daily, sometimes hourly for some of you guys. I recognize that you have faced pushback. Pushback from spouses, pushback from children, pushback from leaders, pushback from coworkers, pushback from the dog, pushback from the baby. You name it, you've received pushback. But it's in those moments where you have to choose to be bold and courageous. And there's even some of you who you're in this circumstance and you're like, I've already done this. I've already tried this. It didn't work. Okay, well, let's try it again. And let's try it again, and let's try it again, and let's try it again until we overcome. And let's push through again and again and again until we overcome. Let's try it every single which way we can until we get our breakthrough. Because you've got a wall standing in front of you, and you may have hit that wall 5 times, 6 times, 60 times, but you are causing a crack somewhere, and we need to find that weak spot in that wall. So yes, we're going to hit it. Just as Joshua and his mighty men had to walk around those walls of Jericho, and they saw not a crack, they saw not a crumble, they saw not a shaking of dust. They had to walk, and they had to walk, and they had to walk, and they had to walk until eventually those walls came down. So you need to identify the restrictions and break free of them. Now, for some of you, these restrictions could be familial or cultural doctrines. If you grew up in a family or in a culture that is predominantly full of poverty mentality and poverty, well, guess what? You've most likely got some of that poverty mentality in you. I remember reading a very fascinating scripture. I can't remember which scripture it is right this precise moment. It could be Galatians or Luke, but it was a very fascinating scripture that spoke about how the poor fear mammon. The poor fear mammon. The wealth don't. Because they make their money work for them, by the way. They are not slaves to money. Money works for them. And I just loved this perspective because when we're dealing with breaking free of restrictions, we need to recognize that there could be some cultural or familial doctrines that are pulling or holding you back, that are telling you that it is impossible, that you need to be afraid, that you should not be bold, you should not be courageous, because if you are, you're going to face rejection, just like your father did, just like your mother did, just like so-and-so did. Because guess what? They had a vision for the future that was not ready for their age, but it is ready for your generation. Do you know, when you go back and you look at history and you look at archaeology, absolutely fascinating. There are so many hints at modern technology. People over 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago were already getting ideas and wisdom for the modern technology that we have every single day and don't even think about. They were already getting the wisdom back there, but technology was not advanced enough for them to put it into place. That is how incredible God's knowledge, God's forethought is. Thousands of years ago, God started aligning your bloodline. Thousands of years ago, God started giving your bloodline the vision for what you would create today. They just did not have the technological advancements that we did today in order to make it flourish. And so you need to look at those cultural and those familial doctrines that are restricting you from stepping out. You also need to look at any slavery mentalities. Slavery mentalities are keeping you in bondage to serving where you shouldn't serve. Like I said earlier, the poor are in bondage and into slavery to mammon, not the wealthy. So if you are in bondage, if you are in slavery, you are afraid of money ruling your life, if you are afraid of money and your wealth and your new lifestyle as pulling you away from God, you need to look at that. Because when I read the word for a God that created an entire nation that shifted the entire economy for the entire world. That's God's plan. God's nation, God's kingdom, God's business was creating a nation where silver was considered chump change. That's God's plan. That's God's pattern. That's what God put in place. That was his intention for his people, for his chosen people. Through Solomon's sin, we lost that. But that has always been God's plan. That has always been God's pattern from Genesis all the way to Revelations. So if you are afraid of every good gift that God has for you, pulling you away from God, we need to look at those doctrines. We need to look at those slavery mentalities. And we need to look at any fear of failure and rejection that is holding you back from really taking on the inheritance that God has for you. If you're having those thoughts, if you're having those feelings, guys, let's look at them. Let's break free of them because God has a beautiful future in plan for you, a future that He's been putting in the works and He's been arranging for many, many years. Now, look, I do have a self-study project for you guys that's going to help you bring all of this full circle as we prepare for part 3 next week. Before I do, I want to recommend to you, as I've been speaking, this has probably stirred up some stuff in you. Perhaps you're recognizing some discomfort. Perhaps you're recognizing some of these own mentalities in your life coming up. You're feeling those restrictions, but you're not sure what to do about them. What I would like you to do is go to www.myprophetictribe.com and book a free consultation, okay? Go ahead and book that consultation so we can pray with you, so we can help you. Come join this community, because here in our Next Gen Prophets community, what we do is we help you break free of those restrictions. We help position you as heirs to receive the inheritance that God promised you generations ago. That's what we do here in My Prophetic Tribe. We're not here to pastor you. We're not here to be a church. We're here to position you as an heir to receive your inheritance that is owed to you from generations, because that's what God put in place for you. That was His promise for your life, okay? I also would like to, before we go off and before we move into our project, want to put out there, if this message or any of our messages previously, if you've had a consultation with us, if this message and those consultations blessed you, considering giving a donation towards our tribe. Every donation, every bit of income that we get goes directly back into our tribe. It allows us to do these meetings every Wednesday. It allows us to soon start our live hub. If you want to become a sponsor of our hub, you can go ahead and do that as well. It allows us to pour back into our community and give you all of these resources. So if you were blessed by today's message, by a previous message, or even a consultation that you've had with us, please do consider giving a donation today to continue to support the work that we are doing, so that we can continue to pour back into you and help position you as the heirs to the inheritance that God has for you, okay? So while you guys go ahead and do that, the giving information is there in the chat box, in the comment section. You can use that information. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up our project for today. So I'm going to give you a few moments to go ahead and do that. We've got a link to give through Cash App, Zelle. If you want to give online and become a monthly sponsor for our hub, the links are there in that comment section, in that chat box. Go ahead, take advantage of those while I'm getting you guys that project, okay? So I'm going to give you a moment. And then next week, we will continue and conclude our series of The Mantle and the Mirror with part 3 of Who God Chose You For, where we will cover the third and final role of an heir, which is to release legacy to the next generation. I'm going to walk you through how to do that, what that looks like, the process and conditioning God takes you through. So prepare yourselves for that, all right? So while you guys are doing that, I am posting in the chat box, if somebody could post that on our live feed as well for me, the questions I'm going to ask you for your self-study project. We will also include this. If you've signed up for our mailing list, you'll get the recap email with these questions as well. Okay? So your first question for this self-study, and I'll go over these a couple more times for those who need it, is what is the ministry vision of your apostle or your pastor? Now look, some of you are positioned to serve. You may not, you've been positioned in a new bloodline. So God's called you to serve. So I want you to find out what is the ministry vision of your current apostle or pastor, okay? Because you're positioned there on purpose. You need to know what that vision is, and you need to be able to establish it and complete it before we look at expanding it, okay? So 1, what is the ministry vision of your current apostle or pastor? 2, who do you need to expand the kingdom? This is looking at relationships, okay? Who do you need? If you want to take this project a little bit deeper, you can also look at who do you need to either distance yourself from or separate from, If you want to go a little bit deeper on this one, you can do that. But I want you to look at this vision, look at this future. Who do you need to expand this kingdom inheritance that God has given you? And I want you to be really, really brutal about it. I don't want you to be emotional about it. I need somebody who is level-headed. I need somebody who is not going to give into their emotions or their culture. I need somebody who's well-traveled, well-spoken. I need somebody who's well-studied in this particular subject, in the subject of finance, in the subject of accounting, in the subject of counseling, in psychology. I need somebody who is well-studied in dealing with mental disorders and bipolar. I don't know, find it. Be specific. Do you specifically need for the role, depending on your ministry? Do you specifically need a male or female? Maybe you need, maybe you're running a women's ministry and you need a woman counselor who can help with working them through with psychotherapy and getting actual mental counseling through what they went through. Okay, I need a woman who is well versed in this, and this. If that's what you need it. Write it down. I want you guys to be specific. Who do you need for the kingdom expansion? Now, if you're running a ministry in your position, you don't necessarily need someone male or female. You just need a very particular characteristic. Put that down. You don't have to put the gender. I was just using that as an example. But I want you guys to be specific. Who do you need to expand the kingdom? Okay. And then 3, where have you been restricted in your expansion? I want you guys to be very honest with yourselves in this one. See, I'm not grading these. You don't have to share these with me if you don't want to. If you want to share these with me in our consultations, you're welcome to do that, but I'm not grading you. These are for you. I want you guys to search your own hearts and to go before God, and I want you to look at these. Where have you been restricted? Number 3, I want you to look at mentality. Do you have those cultural or doctrinal familial doctrines that could be restricting you? Do you have any slavery mentalities that are holding you back? Do you have a major fear of rejection and failure that could be holding you back that you need to make a daily effort to overcome? I want you to look at where have you been restricted in your expansion, because all of us have had areas where we begin growing and then we stop. This will be in every area of your life. You get so far and no further. Every single time I seem to keep coming back to this point. I always get this far. I always end up making just this much and never above it. I never break past this ceiling. What is that ceiling? What is that restriction? Please do get specific. Maybe it's wording like, you're afraid of money ruling your life. You're afraid that your health lifestyle is going to pull you away from God. You're afraid that if you travel too much, you're going to forget your family. You're afraid that if you don't send money home to your family, they're going to starve and die. I don't know. Find out what these restrictions are that are holding you back, that are making you hesitant to fully be obedient and apply the instruction that God is giving you for kingdom expansion, okay? So that concludes our project for this week. We're going to go into our breakout room where I will answer a few more questions. And just give any feedback as you guys needed. For those of you who are watching us on the live stream, I love you tons. Make sure you sign up for our mailing list and you book your consultation so that you can be here in the Zoom room next week when we conclude the Mantle the Mirror series with part 3 of who God chose you for. We're going to talk about how to release legacy to the next generation and to really grow from your expansion into future generations. So we're going to end the live stream right here. For those of you in the Zoom room, you're welcome to hang back so you can ask questions. You can get some feedback with me. I know some of you are at work and such, so if you need to leave, you are also welcome to do that. Just, let me know. Put it in the chat box saying, hey guys, I've really got to go. This is what's going on, so we can say goodbye. Don't just peace out. I want to be able to say goodbye. So for those of you on live stream, we are ending the live stream. I love you guys tons, and I will see you